The Kabul spring had always been a false spring, a fleeting smile on the face of a city that had long forgotten how to weep. Setareh and Ahmad's wedding ceremony was held quietly, softly, and under the heavy shadow of fear and hope. There was no sound of drums or trumpets. Majan, her hands trembling, slid 2 antique gold bangles, remnants of her own mother, onto Sitarah's slender wrists. Bibigul, her eyes bloodshot with unshed tears, and a gaze hovering between terror and surrender, pulled the white bridal veil over her daughter's head. When the local cleric recited the wedding vows, Setareh felt a surge of new life course through her withered veins. It all felt like an impossible miracle, as if all those towering walls, the boarded-up windows, and the solitary nights spent in the dark had been nothing more than a distant nightmare that vanished with the break of a spring dawn. But Setareh had forgotten that in Kabul, miracles have short wings, and the skies above this city are forever pregnant with storms. A 6-month dream and the night of parting. The very next night was the time of Ahmad's departure. For months, he had been quietly working to secure a student visa for Turkey. It was the sole beacon of hope that could save them both forever from this giant cage, from this endless war, and from the suffocating laws of their neighborhood. The plan was crystal clear. Ahmad would go first, settle down, rent a small apartment in Istanbul, and within 6 months, call for Setareh to join him as his lawful wife. On the night before his journey, Kabul was plunged into absolute blackout and an eerie, ominous darkness. The howling of a cold wind blowing from the snow-capped Asamai Mountains blended with the distant echoes of sporadic gunfire. Bibigul, who had now officially accepted Ahmad as her son-in-law, left the rooftop door unlocked. She allowed Setareh one final visit to the wooden rooftop doorway to say goodbye to her husband. Setareh climbed the dark stairs wearing the same white floral chador that still carried the sweet fragrance of rosewater from their wedding day. Ahmad was sitting on his usual rusted metal chair. At the sight of Setareh's silhouette, he stood up abruptly. The moon peeked through the fractured clouds, casting its silver radiance over his face. His eyes were brimmed with a vibrancy, hope, and passion that Setareh had never seen in any man in this city. Ahmad stepped forward. This time there was no ladder between them, no thick curtain, and no sharp lashings of a mother's tongue. He took Setareh's freezing hands into his warm, broad palms, their fingers entwining seamlessly. Reaching into his coat pocket, Ahmad pulled out his familiar small brass mirror, the one with worn, smoothed edges. He placed it gently into Setareh's palm and folded her fingers over it. "Keep this mirror with you, Setareh. Every morning, when the sun pierces through behind Mount Safi, look into it. From across the seas, I will be looking at you through this very mirror. 6 months, just 6 months will pass in the blink of an eye. I swear to God it will. After that, we will be free forever." Setareh did not cry. She had drained all her tears during the days of quarantine behind her barricaded window. Now was the time to be strong. She pressed the mirror tightly against her chest, rested her head upon Ahmad's broad shoulder, and closed her eyes. For a few golden minutes, the world ground to a halt. The rustling wind, the sharp stench of gunpowder that perpetually hung in the Kabul air, and the dark shadow of tomorrow, all of it dissolved into nothingness. All that remained was the steady, thumping heartbeat of a boy who had torn down every wall in the city just to reach her. Ahmad leaned down and pressed a long, deep kiss upon Setareh's forehead, a kiss that did not taste of goodbye, but echoed with the weight of a solemn vow. A dawn whose sun was pitch black. The following morning, before the sun could fully claim the horizon, a violent tremor violently shook Kabul. A massive mushroom-shaped cloud from an explosion ruptured the southeastern sky near Kabul International Airport. The shockwave was so immense that the remaining glass panes in Setareh's home shattered with a sound like snapping bones. Bibigul let out a gut-wrenching scream, dropping her teacup as she rushed into the courtyard, frantically invoking prayer. Setareh, however, did not flinch. A cold draft suddenly swept into her room. Instinctively, she clutched the brass mirror so tightly that its metallic edges dug into her palm. Driven by a numb, desperate madness, she sprinted up toward the rooftop. When she stepped onto the rooftop balcony, a vision met her eyes that froze her soul forever. A thick, dark, serpentine column of black smoke was rising from the heart of the airport into the clear, blue spring sky. The airport, the very waiting hall where Ahmad was supposed to embark on his dreams. Sitara's world stood dead still in that exact second, amidst the sudden, deafening silence following the blast. For 3 days and nights, the neighborhood burned in an agony of uncertainty. No phone calls went through. There was no news of Ahmad, nor any sign of him on the lists of the wounded. Ahmad had neither arrived in Turkey nor returned home. Finally, on the evening of the third day, a few men with weathered faces and black turbans returned Ahmad's blood-stained cloth duffel bag to his father, Asaf Khan. A piercing wail of anguish erupted from Majan in the house across the alley, a sound so heart-rending it felt as though it would split the cobblestones. Ahmad, the boy who had broken every tradition, every lock, and every wall for his love, had been claimed by the darkness at the final security checkpoint, just a single step away from his flight to freedom. Eternity behind an open window. A year has passed since that tragedy. The window to Sitara's room now stands wide open. No nails bind its aging wood, and Bibigul no longer locks her away. Her mother now hovers around her, with eyes filled with remorse and fear, pleading with her to speak, to shed a tear, or to say a single word. But Setare remains utterly silent. She has never set foot on the balcony again. Every afternoon, at the exact hour when Kabul's blood-red sun sinks behind the jagged mountain peaks, Setare sits behind her open window. She wears the same white floral chador from her wedding day. On her lap lies the small brass mirror, its glass cracked at the edge from the day of the explosion. With the corner of her chador, she gently wipes the mirror clean. She peers into the reflection of her own hollow, sunken eyes in the cracked glass, and whispers, in a faint voice, barely louder than the breeze floating through the alleyway. "I am still behind this window, Ahmad. Forget 6 months. I will wait for you until these mountains crumble to dust. Congratulations on your flight, my beautiful wings." In the cold, dark sunsets of Kabul, the broken-hearted girl gazes only at the reflection of the sky within her shattered mirror, knowing that, at the far end of that glass, somewhere far beyond these mud walls and bombs, Ahmad stands on a rooftop made of light, waiting for her.